Okay, welcome back to the London Eye Mystery, Chapter 14, 8 Theories. I lay on my bed that night, trying to ignore the shuffling coming from less than a metre away. I could smell shampoo and hear breathing that reminded me of a restless panther. It was Kat, on the Lilo where Salim had been the night before. The city noises came through the open window. Lorries pounded down the main road. Aircraft droned overhead. I imagined a great anvil-shaped cloud forming over southeast London, and hot air rising in convection currents. There was an instability in the upper atmosphere. I often don't sleep at night. My brain is filled with all the strange facts about the world. I switch on my reading lamp and listen to the shipping forecasts on the radio on low volume. I get out my weather books. I study the charts of isobars and isotherms. I examine photographs of what the weather leaves behind. Dried up lakes, wrecked shanty towns, mudslides, people rowing boats around the roofs of their houses. And I plan how when I grow up I will help prepare people for the disasters and save their lives and their money and advise governments on how to manage the weather. But tonight I couldn't switch on the light because of Kat. I think the molecules in my brain went haywire, because all I could think of were dodos chasing Lord Lucan, who was sailing away in the Mary Celeste, towards an evening sky with a giant bicycle wheel for a moon. I saw Salim waving from the deck, just as he waved that last time before boarding his pod. I heard Aunt Gloria's voice saying it was me that had suggested going to the London Eye, when it hadn't been. I saw Mum's hand flicking me away like a fly. Ted, Kat was awake. Ted? What? Are you awake? Yes. So am I. She sat upright and I saw her arm reach over for the bedside light. She switched it on and we blinked at each other. It's no good. We've got to talk about it. She sat with her hands clasped around her knees, on her head, on her kneecaps. Her strands of brown hair, flopped untidily over her shoulders. I said. Yourself, she said. It took me a moment to realise she was imitating me. She smiled. Maybe if I sound like you, I'll think like you, Ted. I don't think thinking like me is any better than thinking like you, I said. We listened to my alarm clock ticking. Ted, what strikes you as the oddest thing about Salim's disappearance? The fact that he disappeared from a sealed pod, I said. Kat nodded. He went up in the eye and didn't come down. Definitely odd, I said. And nobody else, not the police, not Mum or Dad, not Auntie Glo, seems to realise how odd. They all ignore what we keep telling them and make out how we just weren't paying attention and missed how someone... But that's not possible, is it? Possible? Yes. Probable? No, I said. We saw 2 capsules empty out before his came down, and several after. I timed how long he was up with my watch. There was only a small margin of error possible. So what happened? Where did he get to? I have 8 different theories, I said. Kat was impressed. 8 different theories? 8. One of them must be correct, unless there's one or more theories I'm missing. What if I write them down? Kat grabbed a piece of paper from my desk and I dictated the following list. This is what Kat wrote, with her own comment after each theory, saying how likely she thought it. Salim hid in the pod, under the seat maybe, and went round 3 or more times, getting out when we'd given up looking. Just possible, worth checking out. Ted's watch went wrong. Salim get out the pod when we weren't there to meet him. Unlikely. Just check Ted's watch. 23:43. His alarm clock says the same. It's keeping perfect time. Ted says he checked it 5 times against Big Ben while we were out that day. 3. Salim got out of his pod, but we missed him somehow by accident, and he didn't see us either. What parents police think. But we only have a 2% chance. We both kept a lookout on everybody that came out, and there were never many people at once. Salim would have had to miss us too. Unless... 4. Salim either deliberately avoided us or was suffering from amnesia, memory loss. This theory means he must have wanted to run away or was perhaps knocked on the head and somehow forgot about us. But we were standing there looking at everybody as they came off, and we still don't know how we would have missed him even if he didn't want us to see him, or forgot what we looked like. So really as unlikely as 3. 5. Salim spontaneously combusted. I've never heard of this, but Ted seems to think sometimes people just vanish into a puff of smoke. He says it's rare but documented phenomenon and works like local thunderstorms. Not likely, hardly counts. 6. Salim emerged from the pod in disguise. Possible, but going by the other people who got out of the pod, the Japanese tourist, woman, tiny children, etc., Highly improbable. The person who looked most like Salim was the boyfriend of the girl in the pink jacket, but he was a plumber and a much fuller face. Definitely not Salim. Anyway, how would he have changed clothes without anybody in the pod noticing? 7. Salim went into a time warp. He could be stranded in another time or even a parallel universe. Probability factor 0, as with theory 5. 8. Salim emerged from the pod hiding beneath somebody else's clothes. When we got to this last theory, Kat looked at me over the top of her pen. She didn't even bother writing down her comment. You remember how Laurel and Hardy almost get out of the Foreign Legion camp in The Flying Deuces? I said. It's the film we watch with Dad every Christmas. Ollie, the fat one, is heartbroken because the girl he loves doesn't love him and wants to forget her. And a man tells him that if he joins the Foreign Legion, he will forget her. So he joins the Foreign Legion, and Stan, the thin one, joins too. But the Foreign Legion is not very nice. They have to wash an endless mountain of clothes, which could take the rest of their lives to do, so they decide to escape. Don't you remember? I said. They hide in the robes of these Arab men as they're walking towards the gates. I remember, Kat said, and that's the daftest of the lot. But you remember those African women, I said. They had long flowing robes, and there was a big man in a long raincoat. Okay. She rolled her eyes so that I could see only the whites. Then she wrote down after theory 8. Can Ted hide in my clothes without Mum noticing? I don't think so, but we can try. Kat looked over the list. They're not very promising. Are you sure there aren't any better theories? Otherwise, we're just going to have to accept the police that are all right. I thought hard. Then I had what people call an inspiration. An inspiration is an idea that seems to come from nowhere. In the olden days, people thought inspiration came from the gods, or God, depending on if you were a polyatheist or a monotheist. Breathing an idea into your brain. There is a ninth theory, I said, my hand flapping. Not something weird, like aliens beaming Salim up to their spaceship, or him slipping between dimensions, or... No, not weird, I said. In fact, I think it's the best theory of all. But before I could say what it was, the phone rang. So, thinking about that one, I'd like you to think, which of those theories do you think is most probable?